Y lo que hice es que para que lo veamos con...
Thank you, dear Milena. Welcome, dear friends. Milena, would you like to share with us what you just played for us?
Yes, I played From the first Bach suite in G major, I played the Almond, the Saraband, the Menuet, and the Jig. So it was basically nearly the whole suite.
Great.
Okay, thank you so much. Welcome, dear friends, for our beautiful day today. This is our third annual Ida Wegman gathering. And Milena and I collaborated together to see how this day would go and who we would like to invite to share our day as far as presenting something. One of the questions that came up for us, what we were looking at is something where Rudolf Steiner shares, where can truth be found today? And so the question of, yes, how can we find truth? And we could say during Ida Wegman's time, this was pretty prevalent also with what was happening in the world. We find ourselves 100 years later in a similar situation. So we invited friends to join us who might be able to help, support lifting up. What are these questions about how to find neutrality? And our work here, many people have asked, what is elderberries, or who is elderberries? Who is Circles for Renewal of Culture? And that really comes from Ida Wegman, something that Emmanuel Zelmans had shared, that Ida Wegman and the young doctors, shortly after the death of Rudolf Steiner, had wanted to bring about a Michaelic renewal of civilization, and hoping to create these circles, little grail castles across the world. And so that's the work that we do here at Elderberries, which is now a nonprofit that we call Circles, Work Out of Circles for Renewal of Culture. So I want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you for the presenters that have agreed to support us in our journey. And yeah, Milena, thank you so much for offering the beginning here. And I would just say quickly, Ida Wegman is a deep inspiration of holding neutrality. That's something that Milena and I really, how did she hold neutrality in the midst of everything that was happening, even with the Vorstand? What does that look like in today's time, this kind of Christic picture? Also this Nathan Soul picture.
No, don't unmute.
So we just offer that. And if
what we say,
if you would consider to mute yourselves, that would be helpful for us for the future.
No.
And yes, so without further ado, I will allow the value that the presenters bring to speak to what we're hoping to be a part of today. So I would say thank you very much, and then turn it over to Christina Burke and also Milena for the bridge verse that was brought to us as an inspiration with Dr. Michaela. Thank you. Blessings on our time together.
The bridge verse was given December 21st, 1920. The human being is a bridge between the past and the future. Spirit grown to soul in matter's husk comes from the past. Soul growing to spirit as seed encased journeys toward the future. Grasp future things through past ones. Hope for evolving things. What has evolved? So grasp existence in evolving growth. So grasp what will be in what exists.
Eine Brücke ist der Mensch zwischen dem Vergangenen und dem Sein der Zukunft. Gegenwart ist Augenblick, Augenblick als Brücke, Seele gewordener Geist in der Stoffeshülle. Das ist aus der Vergangenheit. Geist werdende Seele in Keimesschalen, das ist auf dem Zukunftswege. Fasse Künftiges durch Vergangenes, hoff auf Werdendes durch Gewordenes. So ergreif das Sein im Werden, so ergreif, was wird im Seienden.
The human being is a bridge between the past and the future. Spirit grown to soul in matter's husk comes from the past. Soul growing to spirit as seed encased journeys toward the future. Grasp future things through past ones. Hope for evolving things through what has evolved. So grasp existence in evolving growth. So grasp what will be in what exists.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Milena. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Who am I? My name is Frank Agrama, and I am a co-worker with Elderberries and the youth section, and really grateful to see all of you here today. Our work has been in the spirit of Ida Wegman, and still is a great question for me of who is Ida Wegman. But I'm glad to know that this missing piece in the present is just this question of the feminine in the story of this last century. So it's a ripe time for these stories to come and for us all to gather and celebrate. So can be grateful that this is the largest Zoom call that we've had the privilege to host, and it's a good thing to celebrate. So I would say, to introduce Michaela, it's in great gratitude that we've been able to come into collaboration now since the summer, bringing Alliant together, inspired by her work with Eliant, and the question of this bridge, which she asked that this verse be brought, and this bridge that Goethe offered in The Green Snake and the Beautiful Lily, that one alone cannot do it, but those who come together at the right time. And so I just see this bridge and this fairy tale that Michaela has been holding space for. So I think about Michael and I say, oh yeah, well, who's to say that's a male or that's a female? We have Michaela right here, working. I'm sure many people have thought about that. But glad to have a tough warrior working in the world and working in language and building bridges for our work here. So it's an honor and a privilege to invite you. Sorry, I kept muting you. I don't want you to be muted, but yeah, so thank you for being here, Michaela, and for sharing on the working with Ita Wegman and Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Thank you, Dottie. Thank you, Milena, for this introduction. To approach Ita Wegman is always challenging on the one hand, and on the other hand, all what we know about her is that she was so human, so approachable, so spiritually present. I thought, considering what might be interesting for you to share, I maybe share those points about which I can say that Ita Wegman influenced my own journey very much. Because we have from Emanuel Seilmans von Emmichoden, 3 volumes about the biography of Ita Wegman. So those who want really to deepen their understanding of her biography, I can highly recommend to read these books. And then Peter Selk published a lot from the archive and is still very busy to really go through old documents and thousands of letters we have from her, all handwritten. So it's amazing to realize for how many people she was important and she influenced their lives. In the beginning, I would like to show you one photo which I got belonging to this friend circle of the Ita Wegman Institute Peter Selk is chairing. This is Ita Wegman when she was studying medicine in Zurich as a student. As you know, she was one of the first who did the full medical professional training, qualifying in gynecology and as a general practitioner. It was in her time not yet so common that women appeared at university, and there were still many universities who had no female students. So she was, as you can see, what we say, a pretty woman. She was tall, she was just right, balanced, her posture was in beautiful proportions. And the first aspect I would like to share is her being as a world citizen. She was for me really a model how to be in modern times, to take color, language, territory, folk, just as a gift of destiny, also the gender. It's all a gift of destiny. It is something I carry as a good to make something out of it, but not to identify with. Ita Wegman felt not as a woman. Ita Wegman felt not as an Indonesian Dutch person. Ita Wegman felt as a human being and was wearing all these attributes as belongings, as a sort of clothing she was wearing, social clothings, constitutional accessoires. But she was a human being and lifelong worked how to make the best out of what destiny gave her as tools, as possibilities for her biographical journey. And I find this is really modern human lifestyle. So I wish so much in our falling back humanity to national and racistic qualities, you know, that we move on towards humanity and not towards falling back where we are coming from and what was maybe 1,000 years ago important. So maybe I can just leave this as a first impression, and people who knew her in this Indonesian times, they share how courageous she was, how she loved to go to school and to learn and to be in contact with people. But then when she became a teenager, she went back to Holland to finish their school. And when she was on the ship back, it was about 18 years to Indonesia, her fiancé, he was a young soldier, died from tuberculosis. And she was 18 years old, and it was her relationship, the first and most important one in this regard she had. And to have him now on the other side of the threshold was an amazing experience for her. So the mission of this boyfriend was that he opened her mind for the realm beyond the threshold. And so she became quickly contact to the Theosophical Society in Indonesia and became member of the Theosophical Society as soon she had the full age. She was adult. And then she started her professional life, first, as we all know, as someone who trained different methods in massage, in bodywork. So her orientation was therapeutic, to help others to feel good in their body and to make them fit for their lives. And so she came to Berlin and listened around the beginning of the 20th century, one of Rudolf Steiner's very famous lectures, what was already mentioned about Goethe's fairy tale of the green snake and the beautiful lily. And she realized when she heard this lecture, this is my teacher. That is the sort of esoteric I'm looking for. And that is very interesting, because before that Goethe lecture, she heard already other lectures by Rudolf Steiner. But she wrote in her diary, I did not attend a lot of these Steiner lectures. It seemed to her rather philosophically. It was not what she was interested in primarily. But when she heard Rudolf Steiner speak about esoteric backgrounds of this fairy tale of Goethe, she realized he is an initiate, and this is really the teacher I was looking for in the Theosophical Society. Sorry, is it possible to stop the noises? Because I need my full concentration. This would be very nice if you could mute those who are not talking right now. Yeah, and so it was for Ita Wegman a sort of new beginning in her life. And she had many conversations with Rudolf Steiner about esoteric matters. He invited her in the esoteric school in the framework of the Theosophical Society. And in many conversations, she also shared about her professional engagement. And she started one day as well a bit to complain, particularly about physicians, how ignorant they are, how little empathy they really have for the needs of the patient. And one day Rudolf Steiner said to her, you know, stop complaining. If you think doctors should move on and develop a different behavior, I think you should yourself study medicine and make it better, instead of complaining what others are doing. This is not the way. But she had not the final university opening examen, the Abitur, the Matura from school. So she first, and that's what she also said, then I need first to go back to school, so to say. So in evening courses, she prepared for this final school, high school examen, which is a precondition in Europe to go to university. And then we have a very touching letter from her to Rudolf Steiner. Before she passed this examen, she asked Rudolf Steiner if he could not give her a meditation to calm down her fears of examination. She wanted so desperately really to make it and not to repeat it. She wanted to study medicine, and she realized, but the chance to fail is still given. And unfortunately, we do not have the answer by Rudolf Steiner. This would have helped for sure a lot of students. But the honesty in which she describes her soul situation before this examen is so encouraging, so touching. And I often shared it to young people that this is not exceptional. If you have your first decisive examen to pass, it's a little initiation you have to go through. And therefore, I wanted to mention it. She was so honest. And that is something which Rudolf Steiner also liked very much in her being, in their relationship. One could absolutely trust what she was telling. Yeah, and then there was a conversation with Marie Steiner, Rudolf Steiner, and Ita Wegman, and she asked, where shall I go? Because she wanted to study in Munich, where Rudolf Steiner quite often was, or in Berlin, where he was at home. And she was asking, where shall I go? Munich, Berlin. And then Marie Steiner said, you should go to Switzerland. Our movement will anyway come one day there. You know, and this was 1907. And Rudolf Steiner was still not yet working out the mystery dramas. He had not yet planned the Goetheanum as Johannesbau in Munich. You know, all the following years where Ita Wegman were studying, Munich was supposed to become the center for anthroposophic work. And the main building, the Goetheanum, the later Goetheanum, should be there. But Marie Steiner just said this. And so it happened. Because in 1912, in autumn, it became clear that the authorities in Munich did not give the permission for this building. Although Rudolf Steiner tried to follow all the obligations, the final decision was a clear no. And short time after that, he was invited to Switzerland for lectures. And he came to Basel, and he lived in the little outdoor house, countryside house from this. He was a dentist, a rich dentist, Basel citizen. And he shared to his host this problem with Munich, and he was very interested and asked a lot. And when it then was clear there is no possibility, then Mr. Großheinz said, but it's interesting, I recently bought a huge land in Dornach, and my wife did ask, but what do you want to do with this land? Of course, in Switzerland, to buy land is an investment. In many countries, it's like that. But there was no reason why to take this one. And then he answered to his wife and said, I do not yet know for what it is good, but it might come. And when Rudolf Steiner shared these problems of having not the permission for his building, for his mystery theater, he immediately said, in the presence of his wife, you can have the land. I bought it. I'm happy if you can use it. And so Rudolf Steiner visited together with the two this land, and then it was said that he slept this night after this, looking the land, observing the land. He could almost not sleep. He foresaw probably many, many things that will happen at this place. And it is, of course,
Sorry, I muted you, Miguel. Sorry, hold on.
mute me. It's now okay? Yeah. So when was the interruption? What was my last words?
He slept.
Sorry?
He couldn't sleep.
He couldn't sleep. Yeah, because he foresaw probably all what will happen at this place. But he decided to take it, and then Mr. Großheinz bought, in addition, more land around this land and said, if you take it, then we need really to round up this whole territory and make it a real significant center here. And so when Ita Wegman finished her studies, Rudolf Steiner and Marie Steiner were in Switzerland. And so she invited Rudolf Steiner in many cities. This was already before he moved over, because he didn't allow her to travel to Germany during her studies to listen his lectures. He said, you need to study and not to follow and listen my lectures. And so she invited him in many little branches in Switzerland, because then it was close and she could listen to a lot of lectures. But when she then finished, she moved to Basel and opened a big practice in which she worked, an outpatient institution. and was looking for a building to start a hospital. And this is now a next picture. She, as a doctor, attending the first medical course in 1920 at Easter. Last year we celebrated 100 years anthroposophic medicine. And she attended this course and decided already during this course, now I will buy a house and start an hospital so that we can prepare the anthroposophic remedies and immediately work with them with really ill people. But we have to observe them, we have to be bedside, we have to be close. It must be a hospital. And already 1 year later, in June, she opened this hospital and invited Rudolf Steiner. He wrote a little prospect with a description for which this hospital should be. And you must imagine this hospital, she had 15 beds in this little house and 9 physicians and a wonderful group of nurses. So each patient was surrounded by many doctors. Each patient was a sort of research, I will not say object, but a research goal. So to understand out of anthroposophic understanding, to make anthroposophic diagnosis and come out of understanding the imbalance of the 4 members and of the threefold organization, to understand each concrete situation best possible. Of course, mainstream diagnostics was clear. Most of the patients were not healed, were not helped, but they were examined well by other mainstream doctors. And then she got from all over the world patients with severe problems who wanted this anthroposophic treatment. And Rudolf Steiner saw in the years 1921 until he fell ill in autumn 24. So in these a bit more than 3 years, he saw almost 600 patients with her. Every free time he had beside lectures and other obligations as the leader of the newly founded Anthroposophic Society, he spent in the hospital to help this new medicine to start and to root well. In this hospital, which then later had the name Ita Wegman Clinic, and today it is Clinic Arlesheim, which was the first name. It was just a hospital in Arlesheim. She had a subtitle, Clinical Therapeutic Institute, to make clear we are researching the concept of a new medicine. And when she still was in Zurich and had there her first practice before she moved to Basel, she heard already about mistletoe out of lectures and advices he gave. And just to show how courageous she was also as a medical doctor, she immediately picked some mistletoe from trees, prepared together with a pharmacist the first preparation with the name Iskar, and first treated rabbits with this Iskador. She made animal trials to prove that no harm may come out of that application, because mistletoe is a powerful plant. And these rabbits felt so good with these mistletoe injections. And so she did not hesitate to start to treat cancer patients with significant success. So this courage to heal, this taking serious the results of spiritual research and just do and just observe the result and learn out of this observation how to improve. And when she had questions, she immediately came up with them to Rudolf Steiner. So she was one of his most active students. And what he loved particularly was that she brought anthroposophy in practical life. As you know, to make anthroposophy practical, this was Rudolf Steiner's goal from the very beginning. But he had to wait until people were asking him. So this is a mystery. Already in 1907, he gave lectures on education out of spiritual knowledge. No one did ask how to do a school. He had to wait until Emil Molt, after the First World War, was asking him. And so it was for him the biggest joy of his life that in the last years, really the very last years of his life, world of education, biodynamic agriculture, anthroposophic medicine, Christian community, at least 4 very important cultural fields could be started as spiritualized everyday professional life, so that he could say, to educate rightly understood, to do medicine rightly understood, to do agriculture rightly understood, to do religious work rightly understood, it is all service for God. It is divine service or service for the divinity. It is Gottesdienst. And in his last lecture for medical doctors and priests together, he even says, no profession is subordinated to the other. The priest is not higher than the doctor is not higher than a priest. These professions are all coordinated to one another because they all serve the spiritual world. And that was the impulse of Ita Wegman, to serve the spiritual world, to live in the light of the spirit, and to do all her work in service of humanization of humanity, to contribute to this tremendous task in materialistic times, which becomes so dehumanized through the wars and through materialistic thinking and so on. And to plant this seed to humanize and to stop this illness of one-sided materialistic thinking. So this was she as a doctor, and about her to the young doctors, for example, Rudolf Steiner said often, she has the will to heal. She is really willing to help. She has the courage to heal, and she has this sense for destiny. He even said karma wille, the karma will. Because whatever we do, we influence destiny. But to do this out of this clear attitude, of course, when I act, I influence the destiny, but I do this out of my best intentions. And if I fail, I will take all the consequences. So this beautiful bridge meditation we heard 3 times in the beginning, that was really her destiny will, to live always in presence, knowing we are all coming out of a past. We cannot know what all happened in that past. And we have to go towards future. How can we use this moment of bridge to help one another, to humanize, to develop further? So that was the mood in which she worked and lived. And therefore it is very significant that between this first medical course, Easter 1920, and her opening of her hospital at St. John's time, before St. John's time, it was 6th of June, so in summertime, between these two was Christmas. And this Christmas 1920, he gave her this bridge meditation, something which she carried through Christmas time and brought then into the opening situation and all the preparations for this first hospital. It was a huge work to find the people, to get it done and to finance and all that. And this process to become an anthroposophic hospital founder and famous anthroposophic doctor was then accompanied by this bridge lecture. But it is for all people helpful who want to learn more about spiritual presence, what this really means. For this meditation is an eye-opener. Yeah, and now I would like to mention a very deep and special chapter of this cooperation between Rudolf Steiner and Ita Wegman. She was in touch with him since the beginning of the 20th century. There was no year without conversation, contact, hearing lectures, and so on. Some little spotlights I brought. But it was always so, of course. Ita Wegman was about 14 years younger than Rudolf Steiner, that she looked up to him. He was the teacher. And she, let me put it so, she received the fruits of his research, and he was glad that she made a lot out of these fruits, but he was permanently the one who was giving, and she was receiving. And she had a very strong self-esteem. And if she was in a disagreement with something, she said this, and she was also someone who could even discuss if there was something to discuss. So they were very independent. She was one of those students by Rudolf Steiner who were not at all devotees, if you understand what I mean. She was, of course, a student and receiving, but she always felt as a human being in development and as fully adult and autonomous and not depending, total on her own feet. And then a dramatic change came in this relationship from almost one moment to the other. And that was in the night when the first Goetheanum burned. Many of you know the last lecture Rudolf Steiner gave, and he closes this lecture where already the fire hidden was burning between the wooden walls, not yet seen, but for him, of course, already clear what happened, what will now happen. He closed this lecture with a verse about transubstantiation, transformation of substance, and how the cosmic forces are transforming the earthly substance in wisdom and love through human willing and feeling when we digest the substance. A very, very powerful lecture and verse meditation. And then some hours later, the whole Gudyanum transformed and went into the spiritual world where all the old anthroposophists shared always. I met quite a number of them. This first Gudyanum is now a temple in the spiritual world. But this process was, of course, extremely painful, and Rudolf Steiner had invested even from his own etheric forces, and he was standing the whole night. Marie Steiner was so in desperation that she had to lay down at home. She couldn't stand and see in the flames. She would have lost consciousness. So she was not at the place. She was at home in bed and saw only the red heaven from her window. And Rudolf Steiner stood there and no one dared to approach him. Very alone. And Ita Wegman all of a sudden saw him standing alone. And so pale and totally calm. I will not say under shock, he knew what happened, but completely committed to what he saw and to his own destiny. And then Ita Wegman dared to approach him, and she brought him coffee. And he was so absolutely grateful for this coffee. Kopje coffee in Holland it's a very important issue. But people who saw this from far, they thought that's impossible to offer now coffee. But it was exactly what Rudolf Steiner needed, with a lot of sugar in. So she approached him, brought coffee, and then she was also standing, and they looked into the flames, not talking furthermore. But she had, through this shock in which she was, looking at these flames, a vision of the burning temple of Ephesus in front of her inner eyes. This was one thing she experienced. And the other experience was seeing these Ephesus flames, that she realized in this Ephesus time, I was also standing with Rudolf Steiner looking in these flames. She realized I must have lived with him on earth in that time as well. And then another deep thought came up in her. Maybe I have the task to help Rudolf Steiner to fulfill his work. So she shifted from taking and receiving the gifts and fruits from him into the permanent question, what can I do to realize what Rudolf Steiner wants to be realized? She realized he needs help. He is a human being, and a single person cannot do a lot if not others are gathering. if there are not people really just committing to do what he needs, and not, I know I'm self-standing, I know what I want to do. No. Maybe this is not so important. So she immediately realized that her task from now on will be to make her destiny to be an instrument, to become an instrument for Rudolf Steiner's intentions as an initiate. And then later she shared this with him and she asked him if she saw right with these flames. And this looking back into a past destiny. And he confirmed. And in this conversation, he also shared the incarnations in between and how important it is that she now really becomes this helping friend again, which she was in different ways, more or less harmonious, but supposed to become in the earlier incarnations. And therefore, from that moment on, they had a very powerful spiritual connection. She received a lot of meditations from him. Emanuel Seilmans and Peter Selk published a book in which all these meditations are described. I think it's also meanwhile translated into English as a 4th volume of the Ita Wegman biography. It is amazing going through this work to see what beautiful spiritual bread, so to say, these meditations were for Ita Wegman's further journey. But then, and this is the last point I would like to bring, then in the course of this new commitment, Rudolf Steiner really counted with her. And it was in October 23, when he gave a lecture cycle in Vienna, that Ita Wegman, having with friends in the break a cup of coffee, Rudolf Steiner was talking with other people, but she could hear his voice, and she heard him saying to the other people with whom he was standing, I will write with Ita Wegman together a book about medicine. Ah, good to know, Ita Wegman thought. But it was so good that she had heard that, because from that moment on, she said, when will we start? And if she would not have known this and again asked him to start, and then when they have started to continue, we would not have this book. And this is so important for us to have, because it is not only the fundament of the medicine of the future, a Christian cosmological oriented medicine, still many things not yet understood and of course under and not yet developed, but it's coming, the seed is there. So it's not only the importance of this book as such, it is the importance of the collaboration. Because this collaboration in context of this book, and of course parallel this permanently seeing patients, and some of the case stories they have seen together are integrated also in this book. I think most of you know it, Fundamentals of Therapy. It's the only book he wrote together with a co-author. And she wrote for this book a suggestion for a foreword. And Rudolf Steiner did not take this forward. He wrote another one, which then was taken. But in her documents after her death, her foreword was found. And when I became the leader of the medical section, I of course tried to get to know what is possible. And during my time, then these biographical volumes appeared. And Walter Holzapfel, who was before Friedrich Lorenz, the leader of the medical section, Friedrich Lorenz died and I was the follower of him. But Walter Holzapfel, to whom Friedrich Lorenz followed, he was still alive. He was, so to say, a bit my medical section grandfather. And he showed me this and said, I published some circular letters, and in one of these circular, and he gave me these old circular letters who were sent out during his time. And that motivated me, of course, then from that time on also to start to publish newsletters from the medical section. And in the second of then my series of newsletters, I reprinted this foreword because it was for me the most precious text I ever read. It was for me the eye-opener in two things. One, what was the secret of the cooperation of Rudolf Steiner and Ita Wegman? She describes it in this foreword, and probably because of that note and a bit too esoterically concrete character, he did not take it, because those who know the book know he writes it so crystal clear in terms from which he hoped that every normal scientist, if he is good willing, will understand or can at least make sense out of it. So you find no higher beings there, no teaching about reincarnation and karma. It's all out of the book. You only find crystal clear thoughts about the connection between macrocosmos and microcosmos, the relationship between nature and the human constitution, and about the main metabolic pathways in the light of spiritual knowledge. You find really only the medical core, but in the framework of macrocosmos and microcosmos. And he is mentioning two books one has to study already in the first chapter if one wants to make sense out of this book. And that is Knowledge of Higher Worlds and Occult Science. So these two books are crucial for every therapist and every doctor when they want to qualify as anthroposophic therapists or doctors. Yeah, so this is one. It is really the fundament of medicine, but what is now written in her foreword about the collaboration? There she describes the following. She says, the doctor, he knows all the diseases and disorders. The initiate, he knows all the needs of the esoteric path, all the needs of exercises, of meditative needs, of transformative needs, of inner tasks, of inner overcomings, of inner struggles. He knows all the experiences and obstacles of the inner path. And when they work together, then they discover the following, and that is the esoteric foundation of medicine, that every illness is the physical projection of an initiation experience. And that was the way they worked together. So when they saw physical symptoms, they immediately developed the counter picture, which forces are now working on the wrong place, causing the illness, because they could not become active on the right place in soul and spirit. And this secret, how illness comes about through incarnations as a gift of destiny. Rudolf Steiner says in the last medical mantra, which he gives to priests and doctors, the Lord the Father is sending the illness in order to balance karma, to balance destiny. We balance out of free will our destiny when we start self-education and inner path work. Then we can harmonize and balance our destiny a lot. We will make less battles, we become more tolerant, we become better persons, and so our destiny becomes as well better. So we harmonize destiny, going the inner path out of our free will. But if we do not enough, and our destiny needs other faculties from us, then the Father God is sending an illness so that we, through this illness, develop the missed faculty to balance our destiny. And this insight, which is of course not something one can share with people who are suffering and who have an illness, they need really our help and not reflections like that. But for a doctor, it is a source of inspiration, because we understand the meaning of the illness and we can give much better and deeper advice how to come through this illness better, and how to help and how to support the patient. And if a patient is asking, is there something I can do myself to promote my health, then we can give him some insight out of this knowledge. And therefore Rudolf Steiner gave a lot of meditations for patients, because many of the patients he saw together with Ita Wegman in that time were asking for, what can I do myself so that my illness becomes better? And so Rudolf Steiner gave a lot of meditations, and they are published in a volume for doctors and therapists. And Peter Selk is now preparing, and some are already published, that all these meditations for patients are coming out so that they are there for everyone. And even someone who is ill can look, is there something, if he has interest in this regard, then he can look if there is something which might be helpful for me. And I must say, this last aspect, which was realized by the way of Rudolf Steiner's and Ita Wegman's cooperation, this was for me really the door to understand what anthroposophic medicine really can become. An esoterically based medicine which brings together materialistic diagnostics and knowledge about illness and highest esoteric knowledge, so that one can enlighten the other for the benefit and well-being of the patient. And it is the key to understand the so-called Raphael mystery. We know the mystery of Michael. Rudolf Steiner spoke a lot about it. But about Raphael, he is not talking a lot. And the most important about Raphael is the so-called Raphael imagination, or the Easter imagination. And it is very interesting that in his Easter imagination in October 23, when he speaks about this, he says the Raphael and Easter imagination, that is Christ between Lucifer and Ahriman, that is the wooden sculpture, which should be in the center of the first Goetheanum, and was not burnt because it was not yet finished. Therefore, we have this wooden statue, 9 meters high. And when you see this statue, I show you, you all know it, then you can see on the one side, Lucifer and Ahriman directly connected with one another, not balanced by the Christ. And on the left side, you see Christ in the middle and Lucifer and Ahriman balanced with their forces by the Christ. So you see here on the right side, where is the world humor? He is this humor is representative for the physicians who have, doctors have to have a lot of humor so that they can really help patients to get back their humor, and that they have a healing radiation and a sort of lightness in their in their way they handle even severe issues. So humor is that you are in your eye a bit stronger than reality, so that you are able to survive, to cope with reality. So it makes a lot of sense. That's what I want to say, that the humor is there where pathology is ruling, and Lucifer and Ahriman are just having their festival and attacking and tempting humans, misguiding humans. And on the other hand, we see here the archetype of healing. And that is the mystery of healing, and that is the mystery of Raphael. And in the Raphael imagination, Rudolf Steiner describes that the Archangel Raphael is standing close to healers, brotherly, in conversation with them, teaching them about the ill-making and healing forces in the world. And he also says in future, one will celebrate, one will draw out of this imagination a Raphael Easter play, which brings into clear experience the drama of illness and the joy of healing and help. So Raphael is an archangel. When Rudolf Steiner was asked by Ernst Leers, but how can we approach Raphael? Then he said, it is quite easy to approach Michael, but then long time comes nothing. And then Raphael. Ernst Leers shared this with me personally. I met him during his lifetime. And he said to me, first I thought he is not taking me serious with my question. But then I realized how serious this answer was. Because Michael is the Lord of knowledge. And it's quite easy to understand something. Yeah? To get an idea of Michael's mission, yeah, you can also share this with children, they will understand. But to realize this mission, to develop this high altruism, this high service mood, this total selfless commitment to the well-being of the world, of other people, this is an immense journey. But that is the quality through which Raphael can reveal himself. He can only reveal between doctor and patient if the doctor can completely instrumentalize his faculties in service of the patient and is not at all reflecting about his own opinion or what he would like to give it as an advice to the patient. All this not. No. To be total in empathy with the other and having this question, please teach me, or your angel teach me, how can I serve you best? I'm in need of therapeutic intuitions. I do not know anything what you need. Please tell me. It is this attitude we know from the Gospels when Jesus is asking an ill person, what do you want that I shall do for you? Although, of course, he knew everything. The patient should tell it. It is medicine respecting freedom of the other person. The patient's autonomy, even if he appears in this moment weak and ill. And this service mood, this selfless attitude, that is this quality through which Raphael can reveal. And so Rudolf Steiner could only reveal this mystery of Raphael and also do then later in September 24, the esoteric foundation of the medical section with this Raphael mystery, because Raphael could reveal through the specific relationship between Rudolf Steiner and Ita Wegman, which had this character through which he could reveal. And that is and was for me really the most precious insight when I started to sense what dimensions this encounter had and how encouraging for our therapeutic learning it is to be blessed to know these things and to be able to study it and to look in what regard we can transform ourselves so that we come closer to this impulse. And for those who don't know it, in my last School of Spiritual Science meetings in the medical section before I was retired, I put together all those texts and key ideas about Raphael documents as study material for medical section members, but also I tried to bring it in a form in which one can publish it for a wider community who has interest. And this is translated in several languages and also in English. And you can get it easily, I think, even through the internet if you Google that, but also directly through the medical section at the Goetheanum. It's a cheap little booklet, but the content is very deep, and I'm glad that I could share some of these aspects on Ita Wegman's birthday for the first time in my life, on her birthday. And I really thank you, and particularly Milena, who made the suggestion that I shall contribute this here, that this was possible in this Corona times. I think it's important that we also reflect spiritual aspects of medicine and not only the fearful materialistic ones from which we are surrounded. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Michaela. I thought that book was like 400 pages until you turned it to inside. Okay, yes, thank you so much for this rich, huge story, and beautifully shared, warmly shared. Thank you. We're going to move a little bit quickly here on,
Now,
and I will just hand the mic over to James, who will be introducing Jamin once I just put these mutes on. Okay, there's James.
So,
and who are you?
I'm James Kuhn. I was a former student of Jamin McMillan in the 5-year Spatial Dynamics training at the Spatial Dynamics Institute. I've known him for about a little over 6 years now. And I just want to say his work has been a profound influence upon, our developing awareness. I know of myself and many others, also in how we work, how we relate to ourselves, how we choose to live in our bodies, and how we relate to others in theirs, all the way through into our use of language, its gestures and effects on others. His work is effective. Without further ado, Jamin McMillan.
And we will pause the video for this part, the recording.
that we were looking at as we began this journey, and I would just say Mila's with the World Social Initiative Forum, with Joan Slee and Juan, Nicole, and I think I might be missing one, I'm not sure, but yeah, what I know about Mila is she loves Ita Wegman. That's what really, I think, kind of bound us together a little bit. And when I told her, listen, we're going to do a 3rd annual, she's like, oh my God, I'm in Ascona. I'm going to Ascona tomorrow. And then I said, would you like to co-lead this? And she's like, absolutely. And I was like, oh, well, will you play cello? She said, absolutely. So without further ado, I invite Mila Cowick to come and share the questions and the thoughts that have been living with her in relationship to where we are in the world today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dottie. I am very excited to be able to share some things today about my connection to Ita Wegman. And I not only come from the World Social Initiative Forum, but also from the board of the Swiss Anthroposophical Society, which also Peter Selk is part of. And just this morning, I went with my mom to the Ita Wegman archive, and I spent some minutes in her bedroom where she also died. And yeah, it was a really, really wonderful to be able to go to her Holz house in Arlesheim. Yeah, and think of her on her birthday. And I've also just come back last week from Ascona, from the Casa Andrea Cristoforo that she founded and where she spent the last 3 years of her life. And it was not my first time there. It's a curative house. And out of the time, I've also the last time 2 years ago, recovering from a pneumonia, I studied her life and got a lot of inspiration from my work in the Anthroposophical Society. And what has been so inspiring for me is this will to heal and these questions about life in connection with freedom and love. And from my first visit in Ascona, there came a strong question about the anthroposophical branches in connection with this question of life and the form. And when I was reading Peter Selk's book, The Last 3 Years, there is a part where it said what Ita Wegman had planned for the time after the war that she already saw coming, which sadly she didn't experience anymore as she died in 1943. Her plan was to go to all the countries, it is said, and bring a new way of anthroposophy. And how it is said in German, I translate it as heart-centered anthroposophy. And this has really inspired me for my work, and this question of the life in the anthroposophical branches and in the society and the School of Spiritual Science have been a big part of my work in the society in the last years. And Ita Wegman's courage to heal has really, and this always moving forward has really inspired me in my work. And when Dottie asked me to speak about something of Ita Wegman, we came to this topic that is kind of the topic also for our meeting today. This question of neutrality and what does it mean for our time. And I have been kind of watching the last years and seeing how through different crisis situations in the world, for example, starting with the refugee crisis and movement, then the climate crisis, then everything that we experienced in the last years leading up to the COVID situations, I've witnessed more and more deep splits in our society, and splits that run even through the anthroposophical society, run through families and circle of friends, splits of opinions, movements, and over the years, I've experienced that they have grown much stronger. So that friendships break apart, families can't agree anymore on things. And I've often found myself in the middle of these kind of questions. And I could often not make up my mind to which opinion or which side I should say yes to. And I was kind of feeling I have to say yes to one opinion or one side. But I found myself seeing truth often in both sides, but seeing that they were going to an extreme where it's not anymore in the service of humanity, or where I feel the small part of the truth is kind of corrupted and going into a destructive extreme. And I felt deeply that I can't do my work in the world and in the anthroposophical society if I go in one or the other direction. And I think you all know this from your life, that there are always kind of two streams that you're confronted with. Maybe there are also more. And I felt like if I look also too much into the abyss and into the darkness, and if I try to fight the darkness or the evil, I don't do my work out of a free will and out of a space of love. And that I really had to create or work out of a different space to transform something that will have a good outcome for the world. And Ita Wegman has always been an inspiration for me in this work. And we can maybe start with the quotes that also Dottie posted in the invitation. I will read it now. That concerns this question of neutrality that I want to speak a bit about. So I'll read the quote now. Remain as neutral as possible, not out of opportunism, but out of love for humanity. Those who are neutral in the most genuine way will comprise the Third Army, which has the spirit as its weapon and unites with the dead, whose souls have been awakened and who are being led by Michael in the supersensory world. The fight should only be spiritual, the spirit against the unspirit. I don't know if this is a real English word, but I translated it from German in that way. So that the living Christ can enter again, not only in the hearts of the people, but also as earth ruler, as world ruler. Michael's army and leadership must become a reality. So what does it mean to be neutral? It's something that I think is kind of, maybe for everybody this is very normal, but for me this is really something very special that I wouldn't have thought to call it neutral. I would have maybe called it balance or something else, but there must be a reason why she calls it neutral. And we can see that neutral in her life doesn't mean withdrawing or ignoring what was going on in the world. She was deeply aware of what was going on, especially coming towards the Second World War. And she saw the destructive forces coming from Germany. And she did her best to save children with special needs and Jewish co-workers and children from these forces and bring them to Switzerland or into other places. And she was in contact with the authorities to make all that happen. But I never feel that it comes out of a space of fighting against what is happening, but that she really always managed to come out of a space of freedom. And she didn't fight this hate or the destruction with the same means. And she always worked out of this courage to heal and this image of working out of the future. And she was someone that fought for her patients where others had already given up. And she stayed with them until the end. So you would probably think, but this is not neutral. She engages in the world history, and she stays and fights until the end. And but she didn't fight what came towards her, and this is really amazing considering what happened to her 34, 35, being expelled basically from the Goetheanum and her task in the executive board. But she never fought or tried to work against the people that wronged her. She managed to hold the balance in herself and to be mindful. And in German, this is a wonderful word. It's geistesgegenwärtig. spirit presencing. Maybe mindful is a good way also to describe it. She was mindful to what wanted to come out of the future and out of the spiritual world. And she always worked out of the positive, not against the negative. And when I find myself now being inspired by her work so deeply in the last years, and when I find myself in moments of discussions or reading very different articles about a situation, the question that has helped me in regards to this neutrality, does this movement or comment or whatever it is in this moment, does it come out of a space of love for humanity? And does it work towards union and love and freedom in the world? Or actually, does it work towards more separation and creating more fear? And I realized this has become kind of a compass in myself, how to engage with strong polarities. And the other question that has become, or another image, that when I do something or I bring an impulse to the world, do I bring it as an answer to something that agitates me or makes me afraid? Or do I manage to actually have a calm heart and a calm mind and create something out of this space? And for me, this calm heart and mind are a very good picture for what it can mean to be neutral. One can perceive everything that is happening around, but one is not completely dragged into one or the other side. Again, I don't mean not being touched by what is happening. And the admirable thing about Itza Wegman also after 1935, was that she really tried not to be concerned with the people who didn't want to work with her, but she looked at who wanted to work with her and she worked with them. So again, working out of the positive. So can we also focus our attention on what is growing and with whom we can shape something together, instead of trying to work against something that we see as wrong or bad or destructive? And in my eyes, or also looking at Itza Wegman's life, neutrality doesn't mean not taking decisions or standing up for something or fighting for something, or just being neutral for the sake of being neutral. It means for me really cultivating a space of freedom in ourselves, in which the impulses of the future or for the future may arise. And I think we're often in our world just shown like two options. Also in the media, it's either you're on this side or you're on that side. But maybe there is also a third option. And can we learn to listen and see this third option? And for me, this third option is often the kind of soft voice of our hearts that can lead us in a direction that is not either or. And what can we do to cultivate this space? Or what do we need to do to be able to also listen to that more? And I guess everybody has her own practice with that. And we will go later into breakout rooms to discuss this question. And for me, it's the topic that Dottie and I also spoke about, a precondition to hold balance and be neutral is a deep self-knowledge. To know also in myself if I'm out of which space I'm working. And to be also aware of the temptations that want to drag us to one or the other side. And deep self-knowledge, considering also a lot of young people, a lot of my friends, I see it often is seen as being quite harsh with oneself and being very, yeah, self-judgmental. I don't know if self-judging. But it's also there to hold a balance. And this was so wonderful when Dottie and I spoke I think 2 weeks ago when I was still in Ascona, that we see that in our Christian belief, we're taught and we hear very clearly that we should love our neighbor or love the other and give to the other. And we take that quite seriously, but we always forget this little as yourself. And so again, there is also a question of balance. Can I have self-knowledge out of a balanced space in myself that is not ignoring things that need to be worked on or are self-destructive? And to end, because I want to give you enough time to also speak in the breakout room, I want to put another quote of Ita Wegman in the center that she wrote to a patient in Sweden. And she said, "You have to wait patiently to see how things will turn out, and also keep away from sympathies or antipathies for this or that group, because the world has to be healed of all the hatred that is floating around everywhere. Neutrality, but true neutrality towards all, is the first principle of the right understanding of Christianity. As anthroposophists, we must awaken such thoughts and feelings of healing in us, so that a beginning can be made somewhere." So the question for the breakout rooms, I think, Frank, you will help us with that. I thought of that you can go into groups of 4, and I guess we have about 10 minutes that you can work or share on this question, and then we come back, and I hope there is still time that we can exchange a bit in the group, because it would be nice to hear some of your voices, that it's not just for you to listen, but you can also contribute. So the question is, what does neutrality mean for you in your life? And how do you personally cultivate it? I will put the question and also the quote in the chat. And I want to end my small and short presentation with another quote by Ita Wegman to Leslie McMichael in England, and with a meditation that has helped me immensely in the last years to cultivate this space of inner freedom and balance in my work. So first, Ita Wegman. Whatever comes, we must go forward with wisdom and courage to be ready to build the future, so that the brotherhood of man with equality and freedom may be understood and come into being through the teachings of Rudolf Steiner. A letter to Leslie McMichael, who was in England on the 27th of January, 1940. And I will end my presentation before you go into the breakout rooms with a meditation that I didn't find in English, so I had to make a translation with my friend in Ireland, David Fairclough. I think he's also here. And I will put the German and the English in the chat later, but for now I will just read the English version. Christ, who you shines in my thinking. Christ, you who lives in my feeling. Christ, you who works in my willing. Illumine me from my head to my heart. Weave in me from my heart to my limbs. Radiate from my limbs into the world, that I may behold your loving being of light. Learn to live in your sacrificial will, as it lives and works in humanity's becoming. And so I feel a part of your being, and so fully imbued by your stream of love, not I, the Christ wills in me. Okay, maybe we just, maybe we lost some people, but we have about 5 minutes. If some of you want to share a bit about your very short conversation, about your practices or your thoughts on this topic in our very special time at the moment.
I would share that even though it was a very short conversation, it was very rich, a tribute to how much has been unlocked, Milena.
Preoccupied. Whoops. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll keep going. It was just technical overlay. He was talking to the last conversation. Please continue.
Well, I was pretty much finished, Frank. It was a rich conversation, tribute to how much was unlocked with what Milena and Michaela and Jamin have brought today, and how much you who prepared it brought in the introductory emails. Thank you.
I would like to say something. I would like to say that this question of neutrality is hugely important at this time, for me personally. And I wonder if there's any more we can work on with this through with you.
Yeah, we can think about that with Dottie and Frank.
Somehow I seem to have found my way into this breakout room and not the main room, because our breakout room was suddenly closed. So I don't know how I found myself here, but here I am.
This is the main room.
This is
Welcome
the main
back.
room.
Yeah, you're in the right place.
Okay, fine. Hi.
We're just a really big breakout room.
You're already big.
Very intimate.
Room, yeah. Okay.
We're just
Barbara.
About continuing this. For those of you know the glass bead game or whatnot, just from what has been uncovered here, is research for me for a year. I mean, I'm inspired to go back and review the lectures, the one between priests and physicians, the medical lectures, the karma lectures, all of that come right back to the very essence of what is being wrought here. And then the gesture of healing, that we take that out into the world as we relate to the world through our arts, because all art is healing. But to embody it and then forget it and then live it. So I feel that, from this short connection, there's a lot to take. Thank you.
Do we just share when we want to share, or should we wait to be called on?
Go for it.
Okay. I'm raising my hand, so it was my turn. It was really nice to hear you speak because I'm just having so much antipathy. And I was like, oh, I'm going to learn how to make everybody else neutral to my desires in this COVID times. Oh my gosh, stop putting masks on little kids. Asna, you stop it, and you stop it, and you stop it, and you stop it. And I realized that I have to be the change in the world and be neutral in myself a little bit. And it's just just what's been happening in the world has just been heartbreaking. And I shared in my group, I feel like I married anthroposophy and I married this school, and all these people that I thought we were all on the same wavelength are turning to materialism. And I need to be neutral. That's my work.
Yes, Charlene.
Yeah. Dottie had that quote about Ida's own quote about having patience. And I'm sorry, I need that, but I have to put that in and quell my own anxiety and quell my own astrality. Just I don't know who spoke just now, but just as you are speaking, I feel that too. But I've got to quiet that in myself with patience.
I'm ready to sign up for massage school.
My question, I'm trying to find it. I think it's in the quote. What is the German word for neutrality? Because I kind of feel, and Melina did help that picture of neutrality, I think. I think it's a picture that we're trying to create in our imagination. And then that leads to inspiration and that leads to intuition, right? But just that picture of what neutrality really is. I mean, yeah.
In German, it's neutral. It's very similar.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Natural, something.
Yeah, neutral.
Yeah.
Well, the concept comes from chemistry. Because if you have a balance between alkaline and acid, then you get a neutral reaction. So this word comes out of science, chemistry, and because science was mostly formulated in Latin and Greek, therefore we have many terms in our language like neutrality, neutrality coming from Latin. And this is a scientific term, but now we use it a bit beyond its real background, because I like this word when you see it's rooted in chemistry as a balance between acid and alkaline. Then you have a real activity, a real battle first to overcome, that there is no imbalance. And this, chemistry and alchemy has a lot to do with transformation processes in the soul. And when you balance out your sympathies and antipathies and create an inner calm, then you have a moral quality shaping neutrality. Yeah.
Thank you. There are two more people.
Thank you so much.
Hello. In my group, we discussed that neutrality sometimes means do not have an opinion or do not speak out. But I think the neutrality is not do not having an opinion. I think our brain is always like in duality, and sometimes we are too dogmatic. This is good or this is bad. And for me, neutrality is really speaking out, but be really concentrated on the situation, on individual situation, and bringing the inside light, what could be the balance word in this case, and not always think what could be, which opinion should I have, or just be really in the present and speak out what is in the middle is coming out from the heart. And Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny?
So, yes, that's me. I was in a group. The first comment that was made was that it's really the balance between sympathy and antipathy. But I've been working with the Eightfold Path for many years, and I think that is actually the absolutely perfect guideline to neutrality. I mean, Steiner's Eightfold Path, yeah?
Hey, friend. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. I would say that's our work at Elderberries. We had the Buddha Eightfold Path or the daily exercises on the back of the menu. The menus disappeared so often. Like, Elizabeth Roosevelt painted it on the wall and people would come in and they would take pictures. So there's actually not going to be enough time for my presentation, which is in the end, but that will be something that we share with everybody, my thoughts on the etherization of the blood and the connection between the Eightfold Path and the daily exercises and the basic 6 exercises, and what this has to do, this picture of the Nathan soul that Sergei Prokofiev brings in. This idea of there was a Nathan soul preparing itself to receive the Christ. What is this preparation that, that this soul had to go through? And this suffering. So this picture of this neutrality, you know, we could say I balance myself, but actually being neutral. So just want to offer, I'll be sharing that afterwards. And Victor Morrow, I never knew what you looked like. So it's so fabulous to see you. You sent me a book. And so it's just really gorgeous to see you. But I would offer that this picture of, I'm going to forget my language, my words right now, having said that. But something along the lines of how Ida Wegman having the Christ experience, that she too had to develop something in herself to actually become neutral. So it's a practice, it's a path of how we meet each person, each individual. And in our group, what I shared was this picture that the healing is not just for one person or another. The Christ came for all of humanity, for all of us. And so this question of how do we meet the other who feels so differently? And it's this Buddha Eightfold Path, daily exercise path really prepares us for that. And so I want to offer that one of the things that I had wanted to do many, many years ago was to invite the branches and the society to say, what does that look like to actually enter into a practice in elderberries? One of the last things that you would sign for your H&R book would be that gossip was grounds for dismissal, even listening to it. And a young person would say, are we gossiping right now? Well, that's a good question. You know, are we? How are we in the group? So that's something that I'll share with everyone, and it'll be an invitation and check in with Milena and also Frank to say, yeah, how can we begin that path of this, the basic 6, essential 6, you know, and also the daily exercises so that we can develop ourselves and bring about this etherization, you know, this new organ that we're trying to form in these questions of neutrality and being. So I would just offer that. Thank you so much. And I'll share with James, who wanted to share, and then I will introduce Jeffrey.
So I just had a point to make about, well, we have this first, in the case of judgment, when we feel those feelings of judgment going outward from ourselves, there is, you know, a way to check it, right? First of all, we can do it negatively. Well, who are you to be thinking that about them? And then there's, you know, you can soften that with humility. And then beyond that, there is holding a positive picture of the other individual. And altogether, that's a, I think, holistic approach, perhaps. Thank you.
In our group?
For this part?
You were muted.
Milena, do you have a closing for this part? Or Rita, were you going to say something, friend?
Yeah, in our group, we are talking about the Rosencrates meditation and how this meeting point, this crossing point gives us the experience of this equanimity, neutrality, as well in the listening and to the other in a completely open space, letting it come what wants to come without judgments and without trying to change the it is, just to be in the it is with respect for the freedom for changing.
Mm-hmm.
It was mainly this.
Thank you, everybody, for engaging with this question. We have very little time. Otherwise, we could have had more time also in the breakout sessions. But yeah, let's continue, Dottie.
Will there be recordings or information posted?
Yes, it's recorded, and I think Dottie and Frank will send it to us.
Thank you so much, Mila. Thank you so much, friends, for entering into the conversation and the questions. And it was really great to see in our group also this balance, a real struggle, and like, oh, I feel this way, but how do I meet this in another way? How do I meet the other? That was something really beautiful. So thanks for bringing that question, Milena. Yeah, in the breakout group. So Jeffrey, I met Jeffrey. I don't know if you, I imagine you remember, he was in Hollywood with a small Eurythmus team coming out of Italy. And I was just blown away by the quality of that small little Eurythmy team. And it was held at the Women's Club of Hollywood, and only maybe a few people came, but the whole room was filled. And so I would say with Jeffrey, when I thought, oh, we need speech, you know, I just thought of him and his question when he joined and said, oh, I'd like to register. I said, oh, will you offer something? And he said, yes. So without further ado, again, invite Jeffrey, if you would come on in, dear friend.
Yeah. Well, hello, everybody, and it's been great being with you. I don't have a lot of time, so I really can't go into too much. I would like to be able to, but I really can't because we will run out of time. I would just like to say that the stuff that Jamin mentioned in terms of center and periphery is completely out of what I work. And as well as the sound eurythmic flow, shall we call it, I work out of the spatial dynamics and eurythmic movement. That is my basis of my work. The book that has inspired me the most as regards speech is a series of a single lecture given by Rudolf Steiner in Donach, 13th of April, 1923, called The Recovery of the Living Source of Speech. You can read it for yourself. I won't go into it in any detail. But at the end of that lecture, he more or less says, without saying it exactly in these words, but as I've understood it, the speech forming force is the Christ force, which is a very strong statement to make. The speech forming force is the Christ force. You'll understand it if you read this series of lectures, which is going from the beginnings of language being inspired into human beings through the archangelic beings to a certain point in time where the Christ incarnated on the earth, and the 3 years of Christ dwelling on the earth untouched by karma provides the pool for the resurrection of the word in our times and into the future. I won't say any more about that. The other lecture that inspired me, and I've lived with it for over 40-something years, is a simple lecture, Lucifer and Ahriman, A Question of Balance, in which he describes in great detail what Jamin was talking about as well. This is where we live. This is our home, here, this form here, and a line going up through the center of our being. He says, this is where you as spirit live. And this is also where our higher I and our persona I can meet. And it's also the space in which the not I can be. And one endeavors to speak out of this space, not out of this space, but out of this space, in which this space and the will space meet in the center. So the center of the foundation stone meditation, talking about the Christ being in the encircling round, the center and the periphery relationship is what we're dealing with all the time. Language comes into us from the outside as children and comes out of us as adults as we grow up. And we want to find a balance between these two extremes. We don't want to just speak from ourselves, but we can't just speak from the periphery. It's not possible. There has to be a breathing relationship between the two. So I would like, we can't obviously all speak together. It's impossible, but we can speak in our own rooms ourselves. And I encourage you to do that. First of all, just this little movement, expansion, contraction. Let's just do that together, because that we can do. So expansion and contraction. And even if you do it just with your hands, you can begin to feel it in your whole body. Expansion and contraction. Expansion and contraction. And everything living is involved with that. When you're dead, it stops. But everything living is involved with expanding or contracting. Our breathing is expanding and contracting all the time. Our blood, our pulses are doing that at the same time. If you look at the plant's growth, you see that happening as well, coming to the point where the flower emerges. So expansion, contraction is the life substance, as it were. To speak, you have to breathe in before you can breathe out. What you breathe in is not just breath. It's also the idea of the word that you're going to speak out if it has a context. In this exercise that we're going to do, and I'll only do this, it's a very simple exercise that Steiner gives in the speech and drama course. He gave a whole lot of other exercises to teachers, but in the speech and drama course, he gave some very specific exercises. And I'll just read you what he says about this particular exercise. Your speaking will have clearly defined contours and will at the same time flow well. Your words will be formed and finished and yet follow one another in the sentence with ease and fluency. That's what he's talking about. So he's talking about here an exercise which in German is called Stoßwellen. Stoßwellen. Yeah, so something that is contained and something that is flowing. So we can call it in English impact flow, or flow form, form flow. And it's in incredible balance. So I don't want you to stand up necessarily. You can if you wish. I'm not going to. We can use our hand. You see there's a looseness and a looseness and a looseness and a looseness. And eventually you have a whole movement of a pendulum. It can also just be this and that, but the swing is nice. So the looseness and the looseness, and you speak on the loose and the loose at that moment in the plumb bottom point of the pendulum. Yeah, so the words that we're going to try and speak now is a word that goes from flow into form, and it can be any form sound. I will choose a P. Okay, so we're going huh. So let's all speak that together in your own room. And Okay, now this is not yet a word. This is just the two sounds that are going to make up the word. And in between, we're going to go through a vowel sequence, which is very easy, going from oo to o to e to a to r. And then back again from R, A, E, O, U. That's very simple to remember that. It's harder going backwards than it is going forward, I'll tell you. So we're going to do like this. Listen. Loop, pool. Okay, let's just speak that together. And loop, pool. So you see the swing into it and the swing out of it. It has also a feeling of a this and a that, like a chain, but at the moment it's just a balance. Loop, pool, loop, pool, loop, pool, loop, pool. That's it. So you see, you flow with the L, you form with the P. You release the P back into the flow. That's called impact flow, Storsvellen. So now I'm going to change it a little bit. That's what he gave. Okay, I've developed it a lot further than just that. So we first of all do the 5 vowels. So we're doing loop, pool, lope, pole, leap, peel, late, lape, pale, lop, pal. Okay, let's try that again together. Ready? And loop, pool, lope, pole, leap, peel, lape, pale, lop, pal. Yeah, that's it. And then I'm going to add one thing to that, and we're going to go from flow into form, from form into flow, and back to flow into form. And if you've ever done a chain form, this is like a half of a chain form. Beginning, you're going inside the circle, outside the circle, inside the circle. So try and feel you're part of a circle and you're moving, even if you're not standing, you're moving your whole body with your arms guiding you, your free ribs guiding you, your heart guiding you, this center here and this center there connected. So here we go. Ready? And we start with loop. And loop, pool, loop. Lope, pole, lope. Leap, peel, leap. Lape, pale, lape. Lop, pal, lop. See how easy it is? Actually, it's a little bit of a dance, as it were. So you're coming in and out and in. And you allow yourself sitting on the chair just to rock a little bit with it. You can also do it totally still and just do it with your hands, but it's nice to feel the whole body is engaged. We do it one more time. Here we go. Let's start with lop. So we're starting from R back to U. Here we go. And lop, pal, lop. Lape, pale, lape. Leap, peel, leap. Lope, pole, lope. Loop, pool, loop. That's it. Can you see then you have to breathe in enough before you start? The moment you don't breathe in enough, your voice is going to stay up here in your head and you're not going to have this freedom of sounding from your center of being, the ground of which is on your diaphragm. If this is the earth here, there's a timing element. So if I'm now doing stepping with it, I'm doing loop, pool, loop. Let's try that all together with our hands, those of you who are able and willing. Here we go. And we speak on the placing of the foot. And loop, pool, loop. Lape, pale, lape. Leap, peel, leap. Lope, pole, lope. lop, pal, lop. I changed it along the way. I got a bit confused with the stream. I started with loop and then I ended up with lape. Doesn't really matter. So now I'm going to do one last thing. Now I'm going to do a real chain form. Yeah. So it's now going to do this. Listen and watch. Loop, pull, loop, pull, loop, pull, loop. Here we go. Prepare for it. And you in form, 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 form. Movement, 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 movement. But you sense the movement and you just go with it. It carries you, not you make it. Here we go. Here and loop, pull, loop, pull, loop, pull, loop. And again. Loop, pull, loop, pull, loop, pull, loop. Now see if your hands are fish, it's doing that. Yeah. Loop, pull, loop, pull, loop, pull, loop. That's it. Lape, pale, lape, pale, lape, pale, lape. Good. And you see how the vowel changes it? Because the vowels are totally different worlds. Now leap goes. Leap, peel, leap, peel, leap, peel, leap. Good. And now lope. Yeah, you're loping. You're a wolf loping. And here we go. Lopo, 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 lope. Good. And now we're in a loop. And we're going loop, pull, loop, pull, loop, pull, loop. Good. How are we doing time-wise? Have I run out of time, Dottie?
Yep.
I think I probably have. So that's just a little taste of
Yes.
something.
I couldn't find my speech. Yes. Thank you so much, dear Jeffrey. Yeah, thank you for working with us time, dear friends. Just want to share that this was my error, that somehow Frank came to me about half hour in. He said, Dottie, this is a 3-hour gathering, right? But you have 4 hours.
Oh my God. That is really something.
I was like, no, what are you talking about, Frank? He said, look. I was like, oh my goodness. So that was definitely my error. So thank you for your patience, everyone. Thank you. And now Frank will bring in, thank you again, Jeffrey. Frank will bring in Angela.
Is there a video on this speech, a video available?
Sorry? A video on the speech. Oh God.
Got it. Yes, we have the videos, and I was thinking too, just a lovely little rocket fire ship there. So thank you. Feeling so glad. I wish I had been there in Hollywood too. And see you in person. So thank you for working that gift for all of us. That's so important and inspiring.
Good.
Thank you. So restraining from talking about that. You gotta turn that off there. Yeah. Okay, great. Just gonna pass it to Angela, who is bringing another pole of this experience in the speech. A dear friend who gently warms the space for people to gather and find themselves. So I will just hand it to you there, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you. So tell me, friends, what's the plan? Because if we're at overtime,
Yes, I was supposed to say
plan?
that. We will have your offering and then do a hallelujah to close.
Yes, so Angela, please feel free, please be free to share as you would.
Well, what about the stuff you were going to say, Dottie? Because
I'm actually going to write that. I'm going to start Mila and I and Frank, we're going to start a world revolution with the Buddha Eightfold Path and the Basic Six with you. We didn't tell you yet. Yeah, so I will be able to write what my thoughts were to share. And then I will send it to everyone also with the invitation and check in with some of you friends here, how we might begin. So thank you for that.
Well, what if because I wasn't sure exactly how long we had. So I have like between 15 and 20 minutes. Can you mute that sound, please?
Yeah, I would offer, go ahead and share, dear friend.
Here, listen to my suggestion. What if I because our friends have given us so much to consider and we want to honor our time, even though we have all the time we need, right? We know that we have all the time we need, but I could not give the full, like I have a slideshow and all this stuff. What if I hold that, because that's also okay, right? To have something and then hold it for later, because not quite time. And maybe it'll tag onto your stuff later or something like that. Yes, that's what I'm gonna decide that. I'm gonna be the decider.
Oh
So
no.
I decided to not bring everything that I prepared in this like slides that are behind on my screen. It's behind Dottie. And rather to say a couple of other things and hold that for another time, because we'll be together again. That I know the invitation will come. So hello friends, my name is Angela Foster. I live in Decatur, Georgia, which is in the southeastern part of the United States. And it's a little suburb next to Atlanta. And I am very grateful to have been a participant in this celebration of Ida Wegman. And I feel the movement coming out. You know, Jeffrey, that was, you know, worth the cost of admission for me, just being here now. I've got notes about how I'm going to go later and do that. And you don't know right now, but it really ties into everything that I had prepared. It's as if by the invitation that Dottie gave to me to come and speak and the preparation that I did over the last 3 weeks to bring something, it's already here. So I know that I don't have to say everything. And I don't even have to show all the pictures that I have because we've all been working together in the night. And we've been working together for many lifetimes. So we're here now. And that's what's important, is that we keep moving forward. So I wrote a little note that just now I wrote this that said, what if we could come to every gathering as if you were presenting? If you know me, you know I have a terrible fear of public speaking. And I'm an introvert, but I keep showing up and talking in front of people. Right now, my screen says there's over 100 human beings in the space. So I prepared as if I were having this big presentation, and now I'm not going to give that presentation, although I'm still talking. But what if we all did the work consciously, as if when we came, we were going to speak and we had to present something? It was such a blessing that Dottie asked me to speak about words, because I did all this conscious work and reflection to speak about words. And it was such a gift to me. I have been sculpted from the inside out because of her question and her invitation to me. And then I wrote, you don't actually have to say anything. So that is one of my takeaways from this moment, being a part of this community and this school of Michael, is that we're doing everything that we need to do. And I don't really have to say anything else. But I do want to read something. And this is from the book. I think some of the youth have been working with this. I think this is how it even came to me. It's called The Foundation Stone. And it's Willem Zijlmans van Emmekoven. Hopefully that makes sense. And it speaks to us in this stream that we're in. I'm on page 23 under this chapter that he entitles The Goetheanum as Revelation of Cosmic Word. And I'm just going to jump in. He's writing about Rudolf Steiner, and he says, on another occasion, he, Rudolf Steiner, said that the building was a living word, an organ of speech for the spirit, a signpost to the spirit. He summed up the Goetheanum when he called it the house of speech. This house of speech was visible on earth. And now that it has been destroyed by the fire, it can be found in the spiritual world as an imagination. It is, in fact, a task of modern humanity to concern itself inwardly with it in imagination. So the question I'm living with is how can I become a house of speech? So thank you, and love, 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 love.
Thank you, dear friend. I would say kind of the miracle of this moment a little bit is that Angela, myself, Christine, and Elizabeth were in Dornoch in 2013 with Dr. Michaela and Dr. Selg. And that's where I met Angela and also Elizabeth. And Corinne Finzer made a way for me this year to be in a class with Dr. Michaela, who I hadn't spoke to or encountered for 7 years. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting journey. And I would just offer what I was inspired by with Angela, and why I asked her to do this is that one day we had a conversation and a question was upon the table, and she said, actually, I have to think about what I'm going to say. That what I experienced her doing is weighing her word, measuring her word if connected to the Christ conscientiousness. And I was deeply inspired by that, you know, versus just writing something or just saying something, that actually she was weighing her words. And yeah, so that had a deep impact on me, and still does, to how does one bring oneself conscientiously, especially in this time, and how we meet the other with this kind of Christ conscientiousness who came for all of human beings. So yeah, so thank you, dear Angela. I wonder, Karina, are you in the house? She may have left. Again, I want to thank everybody. Okay. So then how about we'll bring this to, we'll bring this to a close because we're over, and Angela also works with the time spirit. So saying, how can we be right on time, that, you know, the kind of sacrifice to give up your offering so generously and so positively is really, yeah, I'm so thankful for that. Thank you. So how we were going to end was that with Linda Larson will bring the Hallelujah, and then Frank will share the bridge verse. And I would offer quickly, Jeffrey, if you could write inside the chat box, someone would like to know the title of the first lecture that you had shared. So thank you. So Linda, are you ready for us, dear friend? And let me just share, we just met Linda Larson. Jean Goligly, let me say his name in the circle. Jean Goligly has crossed the threshold. Fred Janey has crossed the threshold. Hugh Love has crossed the threshold. Hugh Courtney has crossed the threshold. Many of our friends have. And yeah, so I met Linda, who freely offered her editing skills for me, which are always so needed. And also mentioned, where is eurythmy? We don't have any eurythmy. And I said, would you offer hallelujah? And so, Linda, if you're there, are you there, friend?
I am.
Okay, beautiful. Hello, Linda. Hello, dear Linda.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello
So,
to everyone.
yeah, so if you would offer your offering, and then we'll go to Frank and maybe Mila for a closing thought. Thank you so much, dear friend.
I think it's wonderful to come to our hallelujah after what Angela had said about being speech. because when we move eurythmy, we are speech. We bring it to life. And having been to Ascona and having done my therapeutic eurythmy practicum in the Arlesheim Clinic, I'm feeling like I am over there, or would love to be, and appreciate so much about Ita Wegman and all that she did. Now, I'm not sure how many people would know that hallelujah was the first word given by Rudolf Steiner in eurythmy. So I think it's wonderful that we're going to do together this first word. And I would say that whoever is sitting and they want to remain sitting, that's okay. I need to be doing it sitting because of the space where I am with my computer. Oh, I apologize. But wouldn't you know? That is also wonderful if you're able to stand and do it, if you have more space to be able to do it. So I will be doing it a little bit smaller because of my space, but I would like you to know the first translation I have received, which has stayed with me and been the most effective one for me, of what Rudolf Steiner said, that the hallelujah is speaking when we do it. And that is, I purify myself from all that prevents me from beholding the divine. And perhaps I'll say it one more time, and then we'll silently come into doing the hallelujah together in the movement, which I think probably most people here today probably know some eurythmy and may have done it before, I hope. I would like to just go directly into the silent movement for it. I purify myself from all that prevents me from beholding the divine.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you for having it in your ending. I appreciate it so much.
I'll read that bridge now, and so be it. The human being is a bridge between the past and the future. The present is a moment, moment as bridge. Spirit grown to soul in matter's husk comes from the past. Soul growing to spirit as seed encased journeys toward the future. Grasp future things through past ones. Hope for evolving things through what has evolved. So grasp existence in evolving growth. So grasp what will be in what exists. Mila, would you be so kind as to offer a closing thought?
Well, I think there have been so many thoughts today, and yeah, I'm really happy that so many people came together to celebrate Ita Wegman's birthday. And I think if we can carry something from this meeting, and come into a meeting with the impulse she carried in in her deep connection with anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner, then we can have a little birthday every day. I think this is what I wish for us all. Like Christmas, it's not just at Christmas, but that we keep something of her and her impulse alive in us, and bring healing to the world that needs it desperately. So thank you for sharing this moment with us and being present for such a long time with us.
Thank you, Milena.